On generative AI in education. We're going to start today with a presentation from Brad Powell, who's going to talk to us about how GPT-based models work. It's really important to get this fundamental understanding under our belts first so that we can understand what's going on with the rest of the talks this afternoon. We're really excited to have Brad with us today. Brad graduated from Eastern Kentucky University in 2016 with a bachelor's degree in broadcasting and electronic media, and again in 2021 with a master's degree in technology management. Brad's life revolves around his two dogs named Leah and Rennie and a cat named Pandora. The future of artificial intelligence is a huge passion for Brad, and we've had many great conversations about it this summer. And he's very interested in how it can shape and improve lives. So Brad, if you want to take it away, please do so.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the intro, Lisa. It's always weird to hear somebody talk about you like that. I'm going to share my screen. So if at any point during this presentation, anything doesn't work or anything looks weird to you, just let me know in the chat and I'll try to mitigate as we go. All right. Okay, so let's get started here. So as Lisa said, my name is Brad Powell. I'm the Director of Technology, Media, and Academic Innovation at the Noel Studio and the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning here on campus. So I have the esteemed honor of leading the sessions today with how do GPT-based models work. So it's difficult to fully go into what they are without understanding the context, some history, and some examples of it in use. The AI is a very complex and wide topic that I followed for the last 5 years very closely, and more so in the last 2 years where I've used it pretty much daily. So I'm coming at you with the view of the prosumer. I'm not a coder. I have just enough coding experience to be dangerous, but not enough to make millions of dollars. And I have been spending a lot of time around the internet in general and have a very wide open mind when it comes to AI and education. So a little context of who I am, where I'm coming from. Let's get into the introduction of GPT-based models. So what are they? They are capable of mimicking, notice the emphasis on mimicking there, human language, and are able to generate it with a remarkable growing accuracy. That's the short of it. So what they are is they're able to generate conversation in a way that humans can understand, and they can take data and translate it for us. So nowadays, in the current now times, AI can write novels, it can create poetry, create art, music, anything you can think of, it can create it. Now, there's a big difference between generative AI, which we're talking about today, and predictive AI. So predictive AI is, think of when you're typing on your phone like a text message and it auto-generates like the next word it thinks you might use. Well, that's called predictive AI. That's something that's where taking content that you've already created before and it's making a pattern there. Generative AI is the concept of taking something that's been created or creating something brand new, for example. So as an example, this presentation was made with a collaboration of AI, myself, of one called Tome, a new one that I found, a PowerPoint presentation creator, ChatGPT, and this PowerPoint itself was created in Canva. So I think for us to move forward in education, we have to understand the potential, the limitations, the ethics involving the AI, and that's all stuff we're going to talk about today. But before I go further into my PowerPoint presentation, I have a brief poll I wanted to ask because I love data and I love seeing what everyone thinks about this. So just to get the context of our very large audience here, I'm going to launch this quick poll. And while you're doing that, I'll do a little bit of a brief explainer. So the questions are, have you used generative AI before? How familiar are you with generative AI? And how do you feel about AI in education in general? And also I have a optimal last question there for any question that you'd like specifically answered today. Now there's a caveat with all the presentations that we're talking about today is AI is constantly, daily changing. So at any point, the information in any of the presentations you may see today might be outdated by the end of the month. You know, we got ChatGPT 4 now. We can have ChatGPT 5 that can revolutionize the landscape. We don't know what's going on. So I think for us to be educators in the field, we have to stay up to date with the now and realize that's a moving goalpost. So before we talked about how AI can't do this, AI can't do that. Don't worry about this. It won't grade your assignments for you. It won't allow students to do this. Well, we have to be optimistic and open-minded about that because any date, any time, these answers can change. So I'll go ahead and end the poll, see how we look here. So it looks pretty split across the board. I want to share the results with you all. So it looks like 2/3 of you have used AI before. That's awesome. Or one of these GPT models before. Most of you are familiar with it. The overall consensus is a mix of concern and some optimism in there. Yeah. And the questions you answered you don't like to answer today. I'll check that out here in a little bit. See how can use AI productively created answering students. How to recognize AI used by students. How do I use AI to its full potential? Plagiarism. Yep. The Emily Jo session towards the end of the day is going to be a huge one for you all. Valid assessments, ideas for generative AI. Okay, perfect. Going back to the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you for indulging me on that. I'm going to submit another poll towards the end of the session to just see how we evolve. So what are GPT-based models? So let's start off with the abbreviation. What does GPT mean? GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer Models. Those are a type of artificial intelligence that is used for natural language processing. A key note to have behind this is a lot of the development of this natural language processing was used for translations. So things like translating from English to French or any kind of other language, AI was a huge proponent of that. So these models are pre-trained with large amounts of data to generate text that is similar to human writing. So we are giving them data, these data sets, and it's able to give generation of new content based on the data that we give them. So the technical aspect of models lies in the architecture. So the revolutionized new thing that we're talking about is called the transformers. This is what gave rise to the GPT model and why we talk about it and care about it today. So this model allows it to learn from these patterns and relationships between the words. So it's not just taking what we previously knew as a binary translation. So if you're familiar with the olden days of Google Translate, it used to be really rough. Like it would take a binary answer and it'd say the equals L in Spanish, for example. Language doesn't work like that. There's a full sentence, grammar changes when you change languages. So AI had to evolve with that to do the translations. So these two images are actually a example of a transformer in work, and this is from a Google or video by Google based on GPT and how it works. So this PowerPoint will be linked to you all in a presentation folder on Google Drive. All the stuff that I'm talking about, I include sources to all the information that I have, and that's all going to be located on this PowerPoint. You can click any of these links and it'll take you to what I'm talking about. But in this image, you see here's the multiple inputs we're giving it, the data we're training it on. It sees the connections between them, it finds the patterns, then it puts it out into one singular output. So for example, on this one, it uses images. So, okay, here's a collection of photos of cats. Here's a collection of photos of dogs. What are the differences? How are they similar? Different breeds of dogs, how are they different? And it takes all that data, cross-references it, and puts it out into a single output. So if I ask it, or if I show it a picture it's never seen before, it can take the attributes of a cat and apply that to that photo to say, that photo is a cat. So to understand it a little bit further, we need to look at the brief history of it. So where does it come from? Early AI started back in the mid 20th century. So if you're familiar with the Turing test, that started around there. That can mimic human intelligence. That was the purpose. It was created to mimic human intelligence. So early attempts at this was the rule-based system that I just talked about, where language being translation one-to-one doesn't exactly work like that. There's context to human conversation. The resources matter. So this gave rise to machine learning over here. So as technology advanced, researchers saw that these machines can learn from the data that we're giving them rather than relying on just on-off hard-coded rules. So this led to the rise of machine learning, which is the subset of AI. So as these models improved, they're continuously building upon themselves by gathering more data. So now that we're in the digital age, where a lot of the stuff we used to have as kids is now being translated over, like videos, VHSs, been converted to digital formats. We got books that are being converted into text-based formats. So all this data is easier to share and collect and store, but it's also easier for us to feed it to a machine. So this is what gave rise to the generative pre-trained transformer model. So this is the breakthrough that we're talking about now. This started in 2018, well, really with the GPT model, it started in 2018, but it was able to understand the context of the words. So that's the key part here. It's understanding the context and why those words are together in a sentence. So this leads to more coherent, contextually accurate generations. And in the different models of GPT, we saw that these versions build upon each other. So I included this slide just for a little bit of fun. This is a timeline of artificial intelligence. If you're a media fan like I am, a little bit of a nerd. In 1950, Isaac Asimov produced or published the story I, Robot. So it's from of course, if you're familiar with Will Smith's 2004 film, that was like the introduction of like AI is like, what is AI? What does it mean to be a human? And then we had the Turing test developed in 1950, a way to tell a machine and a human apart. So then we have like this Terminator. And I just thought it was interesting to go through this timeline and see how pop culture and social media and all these creations and art and entertainment kind of influence our design and implementation of AI and technology and how it grows. Like you have Terminator, you have Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek, you had chess tournaments, you had IBM's Watson being on Jeopardy, movies about artificial intelligence. In 2012, Google's brain computer trained itself to recognize a cat. That's how we talked about the images earlier. And if you haven't seen this movie, I really highly recommend it. It's great. Joaquin Phoenix is the man who falls in love with his AI. So it's like, what is love? What does it mean to be romantic with somebody? What does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be a computer? So all these just for fun. This is also included. I have a link to it. It's from livescience.com. So now that we talked about the history of it, we talked about the explanation of it. So how does it actually work? Like how does ChatGPT, when I tell it to do something, do what I want it to do? The simple explanation is the elevator pitch of it is it's essentially a brain that just recognizes patterns of data. So with those patterns of data, it then is able to solve the complex problems we throw at it. So that's where the transformers come in. So the transformers don't just take that data, they find the relationships and they cross-reference it, and they find where the data crosses with each other and why it amplifies or why it changes what the result should be. So the GPT models in particular are specifically designed to excel at word prediction based on what comes before. So this is where it mimics human intelligence or mimics human conversation. Like I can tell ChatGPT to give a presentation or write a workshop specifically for an age group. So I can use this in higher education. I can use this in elementary school. I can translate contents and concept topics using this AI, and it will then translate it into a way of common or ways at least it's been trained on how those specific outcomes talk to each other. So if you're interested in the technical side of it, this is a breakdown. This is from ChatGPT. It's like I asked it point blank, how do you do what you do? What is your step-by-step process? So first, it starts off with the tokenization. It takes the input of the text, it breaks it into smaller units called tokens. Now, these are words, subwords, or characters. It then takes those tokens, puts it in an embedding process into a numerical representation. There's not a test on this, by the way, at the end of this. You don't have to memorize all this. This is just for fun. The positional encoding, which will then turn into the attentional calculation, which will calculate the attention scores between each token, give you the weighted sum, which comes into the prediction, which then comes to the part we care about, the generation part. So it takes all those processes and it repeats to generate more text. So one key thing with the modern day AI that's so fascinating with ChatGPT 3 and 4 is that it's able to build upon itself. So before, when you think of like a Google search, you type in, I'm looking for a coat. I would type in, I'm searching for a coat. And then if I wanted to say, well, I don't just want any coat, I want a coat that's blue. I would then have to type in, I'm looking for a blue coat. But with now modern day AI, where it's more conversational, I can type in, actually, can you search for a blue, make that coat blue? You don't have to actually have that full repeat the same sentence and keep adding to that sentence. You can have a conversation with it. So like, hey, take this last paragraph out or add this paragraph in. So let's talk about the GPT models and their differences. So where are we at today? So GPT-1 was released in 2018. This is where it kind of all kicked off, where the conversations and it started taking off popularity. It was trained using 117 million parameters. So it was able to generate comprehensive language. It used a common crawl of web page data sets, and it used a book corpus of 11,000 books in a data set to create its first language. So that's where it started. In 2019, just a year later, they released ChatGPT-2. So it went from 117 million parameters to 1.5 billion parameters. So this is where it started being able to generate a human-like response. So this added in more diverse data sets, it added web text, and the web text is actually interesting because it's used by scraping together web pages with an emphasis on document quality. So they use this example of, if you're familiar with the website Reddit, it used any kind of links that were outbound from Reddit that had a karma, which is the upvote, where like any kind of human upvoted or interacted with it 3 times. It would then take that as a qualified source. So we can already start to see there's a problem here. It talks about that in ChatGPT-3. So in 2020, OpenAI went from 1.5 billion parameters to 175 billion parameters. So it was able to generate contextual responses, computer code, art. It added Wikipedia to a list of its data sources, which if you've done research, you know that can be a well you don't want to tap into sometimes, at least in the past, to enhance natural language processing. So the reason for that was it wanted to mimic more modern human conversation. How do we talk to each other now? So with this expanded data set, this is where we get into the biases. This is where we get into the racism that we see with the AI, their preferential treatment. So this is where it was taking this, it's being trained on text that's just available anywhere out there. And if the only qualifying reason for it being added to its data set was to have more than 3 comma on Reddit, that introduces a lot of problems into how that model is being trained. So that's why we need to pay attention on where these data sets are coming from. Then we have the modern version. So the ChatGPT-3 was the one released in 2020. That was the one where most of us were familiar with in the last year. But GPT-4 is the current version. This was just updated in March 14th. So it is not on ChatGPT right now for users. You have to be a ChatGPT Plus user, a paid user, to actually even use this on ChatGPT. But if you use Microsoft Bing, that is free to anyone can use. You can use it right now. So what's different from 4 to 3? Well, from 3, it was 175 billion parameters, right? This data set is estimated in the trillions. So we're already building upon it, and that was 3 years. So if you remember, one of the talking points of like, oh, don't worry about your assignments being outdated or so, because ChatGPT is only trained on stuff from 2019 and before, because that was whenever that data set cut off. Well, now we're up to 2023. So like that goalpost is ever moving. So we can't rely on that goalpost to stay still. So this was released in, free to Microsoft Bing users. It offers, the new edition with this one was multimodal input and output. So we're able to now take a picture. I can show ChatGPT a picture of myself and be like, hey, make me have a different suit on, change the color of my shirt. We can do stuff like that. We can create video with it. I can tell it to generate a picture out of just text. So with this expanded data set, introduce flaws with biases and inaccurate information, of course, but it also introduces a lot of new things. So if you're interested in this breakdown in a little bit more detail, I included a link of makeuseof.com, which did a really great job of breaking down the specific pros and cons to each of these data sets. But you also need to keep in mind, this is where we are now. That's becoming more widely used and acceptable. Where does it go from here? You know, we're not fortune tellers, but we have to read the pattern. So while you're here, why do we care about it? Why does education as a whole care about it? How does it benefit us? We talked about all the ways that it's negative, cheating, plagiarism, yada, yada. How does it actually help us? So for this example set, I asked Bing, the GPT-4. So this is how does it benefit higher education? I asked, how does a GPT model help an instructor in higher education teach classes better? So these are 4 points it gave me. Now there's something really interesting with this data set that I want to introduce. Michael Randolph says, well, EKU purchase a chat account. You do not need to purchase a chat account. You can use it, sign in with your EKU account if you want. I have my chat GPT account set to my public one. My EKU account signs in just fine. You just won't have access to GPT-4. But with GPT-4, even if you have a paid account, it's like 25 questions a day you can ask it or something like that. There is a limitation on it, so it's still early on. It will eventually come for free, so I suggest waiting on that or trying out the Bing client. The first one was AI teaching assistants. So GPT models can be used as AI teaching assistants to help students with their homework and assignments. Sounds pretty nice, right? A 24/7 chat assistant to help our students with any problem they have. So one key thing that I want you to notice with this, before, if I had just asked GPT to do this in ChatGPT-3, a common thing that we've noticed was it would create sources out of thin air. You know, it would generate what we think we want to know. But this was through Bing's chat. And if I click on these links, it had these links in each of these prompts it gave me. It links me to journal articles, recent journal articles from accredited news sites. So if I go back to my model here, this one here at the bottom, for example, is from Inside Higher Education from January 17th. So it's not only giving me credible answers that I would perfectly accept, but it's also giving me sources on them. Apologies, I'm gonna take a drink of water real quick. Throat's drying out. So we can use it as an AI teaching assistant. That's been a popular. We had at Pedagogicon, we had Georgia, the state universities president come to talk about how they have been using an AI chat for their students just across the campus as a way for them to communicate with another person that they would feel comfortable with. So they notice an increase in students' positivity, motivation, whenever they're talking to an AI in some cases rather than a human. They don't feel ashamed to ask certain questions. They feel less judged. So it's a way for, and it was available 24/7. It could be 2 a.m. They can ask it a question and get an actual response. So automated grading, essay grading and feedback saves us time. We can tell it, here's the list of correct answers we'll accept, and it can provide feedback in an extremely timely process to our students. Personalized learning experiences. GPT models can be used for creating personalized learning experiences for students. So this is where I mentioned earlier, where I can say, okay, this student is an English second language student. How can I create this assignment to be more friendly and approachable and accessible to them? How can I make this assignment appeal to someone who is of this age range? So you can personalize these experiences for your classes using an AI model. So let's do a quick, brief demonstration of how I use, for example, AI to create this PowerPoint. Now I could have just said, Tome, read an AI PowerPoint about generative AI in higher education and left it at that. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to use creative thinking. I wanted to make my own additions to it. I want to make it my own. So I think that's something we need to use with our students too. We can absolutely encourage them to use these in their courses, but use it ethically and use it creatively. So just pause that for a second. I'll go over to ChatGPT. So this is how I use, this is the interface of ChatGPT 3.5. So when you're signed in to ChatGPT, it's chat.openai.com. I just type it in, hey, I am creating a workshop on how generative AI impacts higher education. My audience is college instructors. How can AI positively impact the classroom? So it's already generating a response here. So it's giving me a content list of, okay, you already saw this in the past presentation or that example I showed you. Personalized learning, take individual students' learning styles, automated grading and feedback, content creation, augmentation, translation, accessibility, tutoring, support, data analysis, research, adaptive assessment. So it's giving me a list of things that I can take and use as an outline for my paper that I was writing on. So it's pretty incredible. I just did that all immediately. But say, this is where the conversational side comes into it. If I scroll back up and I'm like, well, actually, how positively impact the classroom? Can you give me an example of an assignment I would give to teach this in an English class? So it's going to take the context of this post I just gave it above. And now it's like, okay, it's creating an assignment for me. All right, it's got the exploring AI generated literature. Okay, here's the objective. It's got a learning objective. It's got the instructions. Okay, it's even broken it down to 1 to 3 paragraphs so that students can understand. Got introduction, research, analysis, reflection, creative component, and a conclusion, submission, and assignment criteria. Okay, create a grading rubric for the above assignment. And look at that. I just asked it for a graded rubric and it's giving me a table that I can add into my assignment as well. Now, this is where the temptation becomes to be just the copy and paste here, right? But no, you want to use your creative thinking. Why does it put these things in here? Not everything's going to be exactly the way you want it, and you want to tailor it to your assignment. So like it's got the points, totals, it's got different metrics to evaluate it on, and stuff like that. So now say, wait, can you remake the assignment so it is for 5th grade English? So now it's taking the assignment that I gave above, and now it's translating it into something 5th graders, presumably, would be able to do. I don't know, that's a lot of paragraphs for a 5th graders to write. So that's just an example of how you can use ChatGPT to help with your assignment creation. You can tell it to do whatever you need to do, and it can give you some examples and give you some inspiration for your assignments. And so the next part I wanted to talk about was this newer application that I found called Tome. This one is an AI PowerPoint generation software. It is free, premium, quote unquote. So I'm able to generate a couple of different prompts a day, and it will generate a PowerPoint and fill the content in with it and pictures based on whatever prompt you gave it. So I said, I'm creating a PowerPoint on generative AI. Create this for me. And this is the breakdown it gave me. You'll see some similarities with the PowerPoint that I showed you. Scroll down here. Yeah, so it came up with its own title, Unleashing the Power of Generative AI. The introduction, what is generative AI? How does it work? Applications, benefits and challenges, conclusion. You can see some of these pictures I took and used in the actual PowerPoint. But I use this as like a structuring point, like a skeleton of my presentation. Okay, if this is what it thinks is good, then I can take these pieces of it, like the introduction, I can take generative AI and take some of the content that's in here and apply it to my own. And I didn't like this one, so I was like, okay, let's redo that. How do GPT-based models work? And then it remade everything again, but was specifically on the topic of GPT-based models. So I then took this copy right here, and I put that into Canva to create my own PowerPoint presentation, the one that you saw today. What a question, if we were to use ChatGPT to help write lit reviews, would we list it as a co-author? Yes, exactly as Lisa just said, the authoring and co-authoring process and referencing some ChatGPT, and yeah, it's an ongoing discussion. So, and also I wanted to show off, Google has its own version of ChatGPT called Google Bard. I don't think as many people have used, but it's still worth playing around with. It's very similar to ChatGPT. You just enter in a prompt, sign in with the Google account. I am creating, let's ask it that question. Do I need to cite Google Bard co-author for my assignment? I'm curious what it says. Okay, according to Google Bard, I do not need to cite Google Bard as a co-author. The language model known as conversational AI or chatbot for information. For example, you could say something, this paper was written with the assistance of Google Bard, or I would like to thank Google Bard for its help in researching and writing to this paper. So just some examples there. So that's ChatGPT, you got Bard, you got Bing. I want to show off that one too. Microsoft Bing. So you can only use Bing, I believe, using the Microsoft Edge browser. Hold up here, show that in full screen so you can see it. So basically with this one, remember it had the multimodal approach to it. So I can say, my dog is having a birthday on Friday. Create an invitation graphic for the party. So my dog's having a birthday. I wanted to just create a graphic for me for the birthday party. Now I do notice that the Bing AI takes a little bit to respond, but it's also generating the content as well. So I have my dog. My dog's name is Leia, and she is a border collie. So again, this is conversational approach. So it's building upon, you see this 1 out of 30 here. This is because anything beyond 30 responses, the AI starts to get inconsistent with its information. So here we go. Here's one. So here's you can see that AI generation does not do extremely well, you'll notice, with hands and fingers, but also with text. So this was created using the DALL-E image creator. So here's, oh, these are great. Oh, I love these. Okay, so the dog's name is not Leela. So take the text out of the images. So again, we're able to respond to it right here. It's generating a new image. There we go. Oh, no, the text is still there. Remove it. Okay, so that's just an example of Microsoft Bing's AI and work. So a very disruptive productivity tool. I've gotten myself distracted on this many a time. But I also wanted to show one more thing that I did not use in today's presentation, but for any of our art people out here on that specific topic of taking job away from the artist. So I wanted to show how stable diffusion works. Stable diffusion is DALL-E was one of them that you saw just there. But Stable Diffusion is something anyone can download. It's a free open source AI text to art or text to image or image to image software. So you just download it on your computer. You need a little bit of coding expertise and a little bit of a command prompt expertise to create it. But essentially, I can say, all right, my prompt is a dog on a log with a frog. And I just hit generate here. And all these complex things are ways I can customize. And that's got like a weird frog dog. So here's where I can take, okay, a dog and a frog, comma separations on the log. So this isn't really important for the presentations today, but I just want to show you how some of this AI art is created. Oh gosh, that one's terrifying. But yeah, so you can kind of get the gist of how it works. Now there's different ways. This prompt up here at the top, the more specific you are, the more specific it is in the image it creates. So for example, here I have one that's ready to copy and paste. So cute kitty, extremely detailed CG Unity, AK wallpaper, professional majestic foil printing. So let's see what it creates with this. Okay, a little weird here. See how it's messing up the face? So this is where the negative prompt comes in. In the negative prompt, you tell it what you don't want it to have. So I'm just going to hit generate again and put the sample. And every time I hit generate, it's going to create a brand new image too, by the way. And over here on the right, I can say, let's see, Picasso. See if it creates something in style Picasso. In the style of Picasso. I'll have to play around with it. But that's the general gist of how AI works. So with that being said, we got a few minutes left in the presentation here. I wanted to open it up for any questions that anyone might still have. I'm going to stop sharing. If you have anything in the chat, please drop it in there and we'll see if we can get it answered. So what is the approach towards faculty PD on this technology as it exists today? So we have, yeah, as Lisa says, we're hoping to give a taste of it with the symposium and generate some interest. We can clearly see there's a lot of people interested in this topic. So if there are people that would be willing to sit in more detailed conversations about ChatGPT or AI or any of these tools that I showed, we'll be more than happy to do workshops on them in the future with our TLI series, 30-minute tech tool series at the Fictal offers. So in the Null Studio, yes. And we also want to hopefully open this up to like a monthly discussion we could probably do, maybe start in September, where it's like an open house. Anyone can join in, maybe like a lunch session where we can just talk about what the new comings of in AI are. So if there's enough interest in that, we can definitely get that going as well. Because we want to keep this conversation going. This is something that doesn't end today, and it's going to keep evolving. And Michael Randolph, that's probably somewhere we can collaborate too with your podcast team, if you're interested in that as well. Yep. So any questions at all? Yes, an evaluation be sent. So please give us your feedback there. Okay. I'll stay on for just a few minutes while we transition over to the next session. My email address is brad.powell@eku.edu. I hope this session was informative. I hope you learned a few things about it and how GPT models work, but I look forward to talking with you all about this in the future.